I have to say I was a little cocky going into it. I'm like, I'm a runner. I'm a sprinter. This is going to be fine. It was like I started from zero. And it's just frustrating. Like you see people that look out of shape and have terrible form and they just run right by you. I mean, on my half Ironman, I got passed on the run by someone who was clearly in his mid 60s or older with his arm in a sling.
Welcome to the Athlete's Compass podcast. Each week, renowned sports scientist and founder of Athletica AI, Dr. Paul Larson, athlete, coach, and sports scientist Mariana Rakai, and coach and cyclist Paul Worlowski discuss training, racing, and improving your health and fitness. Get ready for your journey to peak performance. Hello and welcome to the Athlete's Compass podcast, where we navigate training, fitness, and health for everyday athletes. We are excited to welcome today's guest, our everyday athlete, Kimber Gabryszak. Welcome, Kimber. Where do you live now?
Currently, I live in Park City, Utah, so recreation hub. It's a rough life. I'll just say that.
Outdoor activities. So
Oh
I ask
yes.
I ask you it that way because you have a really interesting life story about how you landed in endurance sports. Can you tell us about your athletic background and what initially got you into endurance sports?
Oh boy, so that's a rabbit hole, a long
Yeah.
story. I'll try to keep it super short. So I grew up in very rural Alaska, 40 miles from the nearest road thereabouts, and so obviously homeschooled. No team sports, nothing like that, but I grew up, chopping down trees and shoveling snow and cutting ice blocks out of the river. It was almost the
Wow.
1800s practically. So I was always very strong, lots of power, and that translated into sport when I finally left, went to college and explored the lower 48, as we call the outside with a capital O. When you're in Alaska, you're all outside. Um, so that translated into sport. I found my way into mountain biking and downhill mountain biking, which is very power oriented. You have a 4-minute race where you're redlined the whole time, or a 6-minute race, or a 2-minute race, going completely all out, pedaling downhill. Super fun. If you like adrenaline, it's awesome. Dangerous, lots of injuries. And then I met my now husband in Park City, and he was working at the Utah Olympic Park and got into skeleton, which is, for those listening that don't know it, it's kind of obscure. If you know bobsled and luge, skeleton is the version where you go head first, and obviously you can tell I liked adrenaline. So I did that for about a decade. I was on the U.S. national team. And that's obviously not yet endurance, so we're almost there, I promise. But when I was done with skeleton, I realized that heavy lifting and power sprinting, it's good for you, but not really sustainable as you get older. And I'm really big on aging well and being strong in my 70s and 80s. I watched a lot of my grandparents decline, and so my husband and I are very big on that. And so anyway, long story, not short. I started getting into endurance after I retired from downhill mountain biking and skeleton. Um, Dabbled in some distance running and some sprint triathlons. Really finally got serious about it in 2022. Did my first, and so far only, half Ironman. Uh, and I did my first Ironman last year. So all of that background is to say endurance is really hard for me because, uh, you know, when we would warm up for a sprint workout, we would run 1 400 and then some hundreds. And like, you want me to run how many laps? What? And now we're talking about a marathon length. It's been kind of a mind bender, this whole experience. So yeah, that was really long, but that's my story.
So what made you think like 70.3? Like it's so far from
Yeah.
sprint and power.
I
Like
know.
what was it that attracted you to
Uh,
long distance?
I think because it was such a challenge, running my first 5K was a huge, huge milestone for me. Like that's distance. That was distance for me. Um, I had some friends that were into triathlon and they got me to sign up for a sprint. They were doing the Olympic and I was like, you guys are nuts. That is so far. Oh my gosh. And then once I had done a sprint, it's like, well, now I need to do the next one. And then once I did an Olympic, I was like, well, now I need to do the next one. Like I need the next challenge. And now that I've done a full, I'm like, I can't just go back to only halves. I have to do another full. I have to do it better. So I like the challenge of it. And the the having three sports where you don't get burned out or overtrained on one of them, the variety, the interest, all three sports are a challenge. Well, cycling is not as much of a challenge for me, but running and swimming, huge challenges. And so, yeah, just like a challenge. Yeah.
Yeah, that was actually going to be my question, Kimber. What's like? So you just said the swimming and the running tended to be the hardest. So talk us through that process of either of those. So cycling, you could kind of just still get on there. You've got the power in your legs. So you just kind of, while you're a bit of an anaerobe, you would just kind of, you grind it through, and you've got some
Yeah.
sort of lower floor there where but there's a whole new motor pattern, I would guess, for both swimming and for running that you had to develop. Would that be true?
Absolutely. Running is probably the biggest challenge. I mean, I am most proud, honestly, of my Ironman swim because that was terrifying. I had a swim coach. I took lessons. I swam a ton. We have an open water group here in Park City that I swam with regularly, and the fact that I had made it through the swim at an okay pace, didn't have to panic or take a break, like that was a mental hurdle, but I enjoyed that the most. The run is much more challenging because I love sprinting. There's something about getting to that high cadence and just feeling all the power. But when I start to run distance, it's more like a shuffle, stagger, kind of look like a zombie, you know, trying to keep my heart rate low enough. I mean, I have a really low resting heart rate naturally, even when I'm not fit. And so getting it high in other sports is hard, but for running, it's like as soon as I hit like an 11-minute mile, I'm redlined, or at least I
Mm-hmm.
was, not anymore. And so running was definitely the hardest for me because trying to feel like I'm running when it's not a sprint and sustain it for a long period of time, like that was definitely the hardest thing for me. Not only that, but going into my Ironman, I had just finished a year of surgeries and whatnot, so I definitely wasn't trained enough for the run on my Ironman. And the whole time through the Ironman, I'm like, okay, swim was good. You still have a marathon after this. Okay, bike. You could go faster. Nope, nope. You have a marathon after this. That was the only thing on my mind was you have a marathon to run. And it was, yeah, that's definitely the most challenging.
So can you talk me through, Kimber, the whole process of getting that heart rate lower during the run? Because that is a question or a comment that comes up so many times to everyday athletes, and especially athletes that are just starting out on the journey of learning to run. My goodness, can they not get it? They just can't figure out how they're
No.
ever going to run at low heart rates. And it takes them forever. Just like you
Yeah.
described, they start out and it's not 1 kilometer in or whatever, and the heart rate is sort of through the roof, right?
Oh
So
my gosh.
what was
Yeah.
your experience? How did you finally get there in the end?
That is a great question. And thank you. I have to say I was a little cocky going into it. I'm like, I'm a runner. I'm a sprinter. This is going to be fine. I'm going to be a runner. No, it was like I started from zero. And it's just frustrating. Like you see people that look out of shape and have terrible form and they just run right by you. Like, what is happening? I mean, on my half Ironman, it's one of my proudest moments because I just had to laugh and go, this is great. I got passed on the run by someone who was clearly in his mid 60s or older with his arm in a sling. It is what it is.
Yeah.
I'm going at the pace I can sustain. I just had to chuckle. So yeah, anyway, you think running is just running. You put on shoes and you go out, and we were born to run. There's that whole book, and that it is hard. And you see people that are running 8-minute miles, and you're like, how can they ever do that? And it seems to come so naturally, but you don't realize almost everybody went through that process of run walking or running super slow. And so that was really, really it. I had to eat my pride and run 30 steps and walk 10, run 30 steps and walk 10. And then I'd get to being able to run 100. And
But I mean, you had to slow down to go faster, right?
Yes, thank you. I did have to slow down to go faster.
Yeah.
And what I love about, you know, the integration with Garmin, for example, I couldn't get it to work on Apple, but on Garmin, it's like, you're going too fast. Slow down. And it starts beeping at you and yelling at you to slow down. I'm like, well, I can't really slow down much more without walking, so I guess I'm going to walk until it stops yelling at me.
But obviously, because you had that high level athletic background, that you realize that it's a process and
Mm,
nothing will be given to you. You have to earn it. And earning it means that you have to slow down first.
hmm
Can you talk to me about what went in your head at that time when you realized that you have to slow down? Like, it's hard to believe that you can actually run at some point when you are
hmm
in that, oh, I have to walk.
hmm Yeah, it's a mind, it's a good exercise in patience. There's the proverb, chop wood, carry water, trust the process, right? Where you just have to put in the time and slowly seeing those 30 steps with 30 steps running, 10 steps walking, or, eventually it ended up being about 100 running and 50 walking. For a while it was 50-50. So I'd run 100, walk 100 at best. But seeing those come down over time, and then all of a sudden you could actually run a mile without stopping. And it was admittedly extremely slow, but you did it. Like, you just ran a mile without stopping. But you see those incremental pieces and just have to kind of step back, be like, this is the process. Next time, maybe I'll make it 200 steps before I walk. Maybe I'll make it 300 steps. And I have a little OCD, so I count my steps. That's how I know these ratios. Um, and you just have to kind of be in the moment, and you have to accept, I'm not going to be a 10-minute miler tomorrow. It might take me years, a couple years to get there, but I'm going to be able to run without stopping at some point. I can see it getting better every day, but you can't rush that. If you rush that, you're going to blow yourself up or hurt yourself because you're overdoing it. And then you'll actually see steps backwards as opposed to forward.
What do you think what are you proudest of, or what do you think your sports accomplishments are from your past? I mean, you've done so many
Oh,
things. Yeah.
yeah, that's a blessing and a curse. Um, because I tend to be overly analytical and outthink myself sometimes.
Okay.
I actually held myself back in skeleton at times, I think, because I would overcomplicate the process or overthink it as opposed to feeling it. So I've been trying to find the balance between thinking and feeling. I mean, going into my Ironman, I had this most ridiculous spreadsheet, literally with V lookups and whatever, to figure out the times and how much nutrition I need. And I'm like, okay, I'm overdoing it. But I feel better having thought things through, and then I can go feel it. I mean, I've had a few really great moments. Most of the time I've been a pack filler, to be honest. In downhilling, I had one win and that felt great. But it was just more completing it, being part of it, seeing my own personal improvement, racing myself for the most part. Those are some of my accomplishments. I was the top US finisher for world champs in 20, well, now I'm going to forget the year, 2012. It's been a while. So
Mhm.
that's a long time ago. But honestly, I think my biggest accomplishment, what I'm most proud of, is the Ironman, because I was coming out of injuries. I only had 7 months to really train. I had gone from doing the half Ironman to a year later not being able to run a mile because of all of the health issues. And so the thoughtfulness that you mentioned, Paul, like putting a plan together, sticking to the plan, saying, okay, if I can hit this many miles running, I have a chance at finishing the marathon. And maybe I went into it with the mindset of, you know what, your swims come along, you're going to do great. If you can do well on the swim, that's a win. And then it's going to be gravy on top if you can do well on the bike. And then there's a chance you could walk your way to a finish. If you could finish, that's going to be amazing. And so I kind of the fact that I went into it with the mindset of I could not finish and be okay with that, but that I had followed the plan and the process, and that there was a path I think that's my biggest accomplishment. Like, I was so proud of that. I cried at the finish line. It was
Mm.
such an emotional day. My husband was there at the finish. My swim coach came down to visit, and he's an awesome, crazy Cuban guy who just brought so much energy. And it was probably one of the best days of my life and one of the hardest things I've ever done. And it was really cool. So there you go.
So cool.
That is awesome.
Talk us through the benefits of having a swim coach, Kimber, because I hear that can really help people that are a little bit challenged with their swimming.
I cannot speak highly enough of having a swim coach. I took a swim class in college and got enough that I could swim a lap. That was about it. And then I didn't swim for about 15 years, other than, you go to the beach and you can swim if you have to. When I started trying triathlon, I was like, I know how to swim. It's just this, you spin your arms around and you kick. It's totally easy. And all you need is practice. No, no. I would watch YouTube videos. I would think I was doing the exercise. And let me just fast forward to get a swim coach. Even if you only take 3 lessons from a swim coach, it will change your life. You can try as hard as you want to mimic what you're seeing in a YouTube video, but having someone on the side that can watch you, film you, give you drills to, I was not rotating enough and I wasn't getting my elbows up, and I do this weird thing where my hands like try to dodge the water because I'm not high enough out. He's like, I don't know how you do this while you're swimming. Having someone to give you that feedback and then figure out the drill that fits for you. He had me try the, touch your armpit with your thumb. Well, that just aggravated the weird hand thing. He's like, okay, now we're going to do this big loop thing, and figuring out what worked for me, which was different because my husband decided to swim with me. So he was taking the lessons too, and he needed different things. Having a swim coach, hands down, absolutely worth it. So yeah, can't recommend enough. Obviously find someone who is an actual swim coach and isn't just parroting things from YouTube, like who has swam or worked with a team. But yeah, cannot recommend highly enough.
No, that's great advice, because I think we haven't really talked too much, I think, about it on the Athletes Compass podcast. But swimming, for those that are unaware, is a very technical sport, and I mean, almost like 50% or more is efficiency and technique versus metabolic, right? So you can have the greatest session prescribed to you in Athletica or elsewhere, and it's only going to go so long to making you move quickly and smoothly and efficiently through the water. And this is what Kimber's kind of saying here, is that
Yeah.
Having someone with experience and eyes on you to actually see how you're moving through the water can be so advantageous to you because of the corrections that you'll get. And then you'll just slide through so much. And you like you said, you don't even need too many sessions sometimes to really get you pointed in the right direction. So it's a very good investment if you can afford it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And, it's kind of interesting as we've taken the lessons, I watch people, I've been swimming at the same pool now for like 5 or 6 years. And I see people that have just kept swimming exactly the same and aren't getting any better because there's only so much you can do on your own. And yeah, at some point, you'll just kind of get to a good level. And if you're okay with that, that's great. Just keep your fitness up. But there's some flailing out there. So I'm not trying to judge, but I'm like, man, you need one lesson with my coach and it will change your life.
Yeah, totally. Like coach looking at you, or even like you sitting by the poolside and watching other people, you can kind of like start picking up things that you would tell them if you were their coach. And even like getting yourself filmed while you swim and then watch that it's brutal, but so helpful.
We bring the GoPro and my husband will go down and take pictures, and I'm
nice. It's so helpful because like when you're learning the technical part of swimming, you don't know how you're doing it. So Kimber, what are your big goals for 2025?
Well, I might have overbooked my year, but I have the goal of, I mentioned earlier, running is my hard one, but it's actually something I've come to enjoy a lot, especially trail running. I love trail running. You can't really listen to music. It's not as boring and pounding, and I can take the dog and we're out in the woods and up on the hill. And so running's kind of the theme of the year, although St. George, the half has been something I've been interested in. And I was like, oh, I'll do that someday, but it looks really hard. And then I saw that this was the last year of it. I went, oh no, it's probably sold out. I went to the website. It wasn't sold out. I texted my husband, honey, and he goes, go for it. And I went, click. So obviously it impacts him a lot, and he was a huge support. So I wanted to, make sure he's like, this might mess our winter up a little bit with skiing. So yeah, so I have the St. George half on, and that is a lot of climbing. So kind of intimidated, but excited about that. But otherwise, the rest of the year, well, and I already have another half. It's a long story because I thought I was going to have to do the Ironman this year. So I have a local half in Utah in September. But the summer, there's an event in Park City called the Triple Trail Challenge. And I did it once before when I was first getting into endurance. You start off with a trail half marathon in June, and then you do this awesome event. It used to be called the Jupiter Peak Steeplechase, and now it's Jupiter Peak something. But Jupiter Peak is one of the highest peaks at Park City Mountain Resort that you can go up to on powder days. You run to the top of that. So it's 8 miles up, and you go 3,000 feet up, and you turn around, and it's 8 miles back down. And the top of it is literally like you're scrambling hands and feet on rock. And it's super fun on some local bike trails other than the top piece. And then in August, it's the mid-mountain. There's a mid-mountain trail in Park City where it kind of hugs the 8,000 foot mark, and it's really long, and it's a great bike trail. They're shutting that down for the mid-mountain 50K. So I've signed up for the series. So yeah, and then I'm considering I will probably do the Ironman in Arizona again because I'll have all that base going in, and I'd really love to see what I could do when I actually have more than 7 months of training for the same event, kind of apples to apples. So yeah.
Wow.
That's a lot. That's a lot.
Yeah.
The
some of those runs are more like long training days though. So
yeah,
for the half marathon at least. So
that's amazing.
Yeah,
that would be fun.
So what does a typical week of training look like for you? Can you walk us through your training routine for this year, for what you're doing in 2025?
Yeah, so I'm on the mid-volume plan for Athletica. I work full time, and so fitting in any more than that, in fact, fitting in the top end of the mid-volume is hard sometimes. So I'm on the mid-volume. I swim 3 days a week, sometimes 4 during the summer because I'll go open water on the weekends. Right now it's more of a polar plunge. You get in the very cold water with your friends in the snowy reservoir for a couple minutes and call it a day. So I swim 3 days a week. One of those is still with my coach. One is with the master's group, and then one's just doing the Athletica workout because I like to mix it up a little bit. And then, I'm just on the mid-volume plan. That's pretty much the plan. Substitute some of my bike training with we're doing a Zwift racing team, which is super fun, and a challenge. Almost threw up the first race we did. That was great. MJ was there, and then running. So running here in Park City is great because there's so much elevation, although it can be challenging. I did the 5. I just reset my plan because I didn't like a few of the settings. I'd messed up some of my time constraints. So I reset that. And so I decided to keep the test week, even though I hate test week. And my 5K, the 5 mile with the 5K in the middle of it was in a blizzard, and there was snow on the ground. So it was a little rough, slippery. But yeah, so that's pretty much it. I do my difficulty is that I also tele ski, and I do some backcountry skiing and throw in some roller skating, and kind of so finding balance between living life and training is the hard part. Yesterday I did a 2-hour bike ride, and then we went and skied for 2 hours. So my recovery score was not great, and Athletica was yelling at me for non-compliance, but there you go. That's how training works. I'll sub out some workouts. Like I'll probably replace some of my runs, like a power run, with an uphill ski, because it's all equally taxing on the legs and aerobic system. But that's how it works. I usually train in the morning before work, so I start work a little bit later, around 9 o'clock. But then also definitely lots of, almost every day is a 2 a day, and sometimes I'll do it after work, especially when it's the Zwift race, for example. So tomorrow night I will be biking.
Hey, Kimber, you sound like a little bit of an expert in navigating all the nuances of Athletica as a training platform. Um, what advice would you give to like a newcomer coming into Athletica that sometimes
Mm.
feels a little overwhelmed with all the potential ultimately that the program has? What advice would you give them?
Ooh, that's a great question. Now I tried quite a few training plans before finding Athletica, and just a shout out to the team. I was trying to decide between two programs before I found Athletica. I won't name names, but I wasn't feeling it with them. And then I found Athletica, and after a week, I was like, this is it. Because I love the fact that it's so transparent. You know why a change happened to your plan, what is the purpose of the workout, so I love all of that. It definitely can be a little confusing, especially if you don't come from a training background. I've had plans emailed to me for different sports over the years, and so can navigate them. I think a couple of things. One is, I've heard this in the podcast a couple times, but trusting your feeling as well. When I first started with Athletica, it wasn't ramping me fast enough, which I appreciate that the platform takes a conservative approach, you know, but I know I can handle a ramp because I've done it in the past, right? More of a ramp. And so I was able to feel that I could go a little farther or a little longer, or a little harder. And so, if you feel okay with that, now don't go faster. You're supposed to still run slow to go fast, and you're still supposed to have your power sessions and your pulling sessions on the swim. But if you need a longer run or a longer bike at those levels, I think, and you can feel it okay and you're feeling recovered the next day, I think that's hard for people that aren't from a plan background and they just follow it too rigidly, not understanding that there are some nuances. Once Athletica got, and I think people don't also understand that it may take a few weeks for Athletica to really understand how you're responding to things. It took about a month for me, or maybe 6 weeks, which can feel like a really long time that the plan doesn't feel like it's responding. But I think letting people know that it's going to take some time to get used to your own
Mm.
data, I think is really helpful. And then just using the resources, definitely check out the forum, read the FAQs. I think a lot of times I did this for a while. I just looked at the training plan and I forgot there are all these really cool charts and profiles and whatnot. And I didn't understand workout reserve. And so taking the time to read the materials, just click around, like explore, look at the charts and try to understand what's going in behind it and go ask questions on the forum. That was the other thing I really loved about Athletica, or still love. But what got me to choose Athletica is I could ask the core team questions and get answers. It's amazing. Use that.
Yeah, kudos to MJ and Paul as well, who is a huge contributors to the forum. Answering so many of the users' questions,
Yeah.
and they're experienced expert coaches. And yeah, at least at this point, yeah, people that are considering Athletica, you've got those resources with Athletica, and we're so lucky.
Um, I remember you joined us for weekly heat sessions, and your progress, like you had just come from a knee injury, and your FTP like skyrocketed after a few weeks. Like every week, it was a new,
Hmm.
FTP or critical power announcement. Um, Talk to us about recovering from injury and what did you tell yourself and not giving up, because like you had a lot of injuries and illnesses,
Oh my
and
gosh, that was,
a
yeah.
few months of training, and you completed Ironman.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, I call it the year from hell, but honestly, it wasn't that bad. It was just one thing after another, one injury, an illness, a surgery, like appendicitis and a knee injury and like a concussion. And it was a rough year, but they didn't all happen at once. And so I'd start to see light at the end of the tunnel and be like, okay, I'm going to get back to it. 'Cause I'm so much happier when I'm training. My mind is clear and it just brings happiness. And it was hard to keep my chin up for a bit, but I don't know if any of you, I think you've made references to it, but stoicism, not the what people think of as the Stoics of just life is hard and we suck it up, but taking the stoicism, like taking appreciation for what you have, how much worse it could be. Like, you know what? I can still take the dog for a walk. I remember the first time after knee surgery when I walked to the mailbox and back, which is just down the street. I was so happy, so happy because I'd been locked in the house, right? You just have to take the time to appreciate what you have and think it could be worse. That knee surgery could have gone really badly, but here I am recovering. Or, um, I had some heart rate issues as a result of a concussion, and I could only ride on the spin bike at a really low heart rate of 75 beats per minute for like a month. Sounds horrible, but hey, I was on the spin bike. This is great. I could do something. I love this. And then the next time you're assessed, I can go to 85 heartbeat or beats per minute. This is great. Like, you just have to be in the moment. And, I was spending time with my family. I was able to focus on a new job, without all the stress. You have to find something positive and look forward a little bit, be in the moment, but not dwell on the fact that you're not where you want to go yet. And so, yeah, that was the mindset, was just one day at a time. It could be worse. It's slowly getting better. And then once they pulled the shackles off in March or in April, okay, you can spin bike, you can ride. I started riding. And then in May, when I was cleared to run, it's like, okay, I'm good. And when I talk about that I can ramp, you saw that, MJ, where every race it was like a new FTP. It was amazing. I don't think that's going to happen anymore, but getting back on the horse and just feeling good and obviously listening to your body. But it was great.
Man, that's some words of wisdom for me, Kimber. It's just like you've packaged up to me the word perspective and in that mindset, right? Like you can think the glass is half full, or you can think the glass is half empty, and it's sort of is within your control, right? In just
Yep.
about anything in life, and
Is it bad or
it's
good?
crazy, and
Yes.
I think we're all
Yes.
we're all guilty of going in either sort of side, right? But like, the number of times when I've been depressed and down about, Athletica not going the way I want it to, but then, like sometimes look at what we've got here and what we're building,
Mm-hmm.
and, people like yourselves, Kimber, and Paul and Mariana joining us. And it's just, it's hard not to see the goods that's finally kind of getting there,
Mm-hmm.
but it hasn't always been that way for me. And but this is just for any lesson in life. So yeah, thanks for that reminder. Perspective is
No
everything.
problem.
Gratitude, right, is always sort of the better
Mm-hmm.
way. And thinking that the glasses, it really have, look at all the blessings we have, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Kind of similarly on that, really quick, is when things are going good is another time when we tend to slip as well and just
Yeah.
take that for granted. I mean, I did a half Ironman, and then a year later I wasn't able to do anything. Like, it can go quickly. And so being grateful for what we have when the times are good and remembering that and appreciating it and doing what we can to keep it, riding those waves. Every high, there might be a low after, and how are you going to prepare for that and handle it?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I'm almost reflecting on, with what you're saying, Kimber, I'm reflecting on some really cool conversations that I had with High Performance Sport New Zealand in the Olympic program. And they were saying like that reflection, it's so often made in these negative outcomes. But
Mm-hmm.
just like you're saying, we should also really reflect on positive outcomes as well too, right? Like, okay, so
Yeah.
what actually went, why did that go well? Like, because sometimes you'll just dismiss it, right, and just kind of party and
Mm-hmm.
celebrate. But it's like in either case, like, you should always be sort of doing that same thing and always kind of reflecting on why you might have got that outcome. Like, what were the pieces of that puzzle that went
Mm-hmm.
well or not so well, irrespective of whatever sort of occurrence happened. So
Mm-hmm.
I like.
I
Um,
love it.
you have an incredible story coming from, downhill mountain biking, which is terrifying to watch, by the way.
Skeleton
To
2, Mariana.
Yeah, skeleton
skeleton,
too.
yeah, skeleton 2, which is just for some people like me, yeah, it's incredible. To taking on endurance challenges, how has that changed you physically and mentally over the years?
I mean, we kind of talked about it earlier, which is learning the process, you know. When I first started downhilling, or mountain biking at all, it was all terrifying. I remember my first time on a mountain bike, my friend was trying to get me to just ride from the side of the highway down the little gravel track onto the trail. And it took me like 10 minutes to work up the courage to go down that little tiny, not very steep trail. Uh, and it's just, I think all of it is it's just a process and patience and trying different things, pushing yourself and surrounding yourself as well with people that will motivate you. You know, they say if you want to ski faster, ski with people faster than you. You want to ride faster, ride with people faster than you. And finding the right people to motivate you, set a good example, and just put in the time and recognize that your mind is the biggest limiter pretty much of anything. And, you know, just give it a try. And I think that's been the biggest thing. And so when I first started thinking about distance and half Ironman or a 70.3 and a full, it sounded impossible, but based on my experience, I knew it wasn't impossible. The whole, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
Mm-hmm.
And just knowing, because I had that background, knowing that there's a path. If I want to do something, you just have to make a plan and follow the plan and give it a try and kind of adjust from there. I think that's been the biggest thing. I've changed careers twice as a result, not as a result, but kind of related, which would be intimidating to people. This isn't what I studied. I'm kind of scared. But knowing that you can take on a challenge is 90% of the battle. And then you just have to put in the effort. I think that's been the biggest thing from all of this is why not try?
So first of all, slow down to go fast is very, very clear that that helped. Kimber, I loved, she threw in there, chop wood, carry water. Sometimes you got to walk first before you can run. If you're converting yourself over from like a fast twitch phenotype over to a slow twitch phenotype, and that was her goal. That's where she sort of started. She was into the health and longevity, thinking here, and it's like, okay, I've definitely got the power and strength nailed, but this endurance thing seems to be pretty important too. I better do that. And she figured out a way. She had to slow down first to go fast. Second of all, she also discovered that when she was to improve her swimming, she really needed to find a swim coach because, and rightly so, swimming is more than 50% sort of efficiency, and just that small investment in a swim coach to improve her technique made all the difference. I loved her talk on thinking versus feeling. So when you first start on any training program, there's a lot of thinking that has to go on. And specifically, we spoke about Athletica, right? And Athletica it's actually quite technical. There's quite a bit of thinking to kind of navigate your way around, but eventually that thinking, and you get these, you sort of get in the groove. It then transfers over to feeling as the thing that will optimize your process moving forward. So that was a really important point that Kimber made. So thinking versus feeling. And last but not least, and this is for all of us, and this I really took this one to heart, is just your perspective and your mindset is so important. So, anything in your life can be perceived as a negative, or it can be, you can take gratitude and on board and take it as a positive. So I really appreciated that one for me personally, Kimber. That's what I have.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Kimber. We appreciate you coming on board today.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here, and thanks for everything you do. I love the team and the platform, the results. It's fantastic.
Thank you for exploring the path to peak performance with us today on the Athletes Compass podcast. When you subscribe, you'll ensure that you're always tuned in for your next journey into endurance, mindset, and performance. And when you share this episode with a friend, teammate, or a coach, you'll be helping them discover new ways to level up their training and life. Take a moment now, subscribe, share, and let's keep navigating this endurance adventure together. For more information or to schedule a consultation with Paul, Mariana, or me, check the links in the show notes. For Kimber Gabryszak, Mariana Rakai, and Dr. Paul Larson, I am Paul Worlowski, and this has been the Athletes Compass podcast. Thank you so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed another episode of the Athletes Compass podcast, your North Star through the sometimes complicated world of training for your endurance sport. We appreciate your comments and training questions and your 5-star reviews. For a deeper dive into the science of endurance sports, listen to the Training Science podcast and check out the adaptive AI training platform Athletica.ai. Thanks for listening.